Welcome everyone. I'm joined today by a good friend, actually my brother from the same mother, Matt Ford. Hi Matt.
Hello. Yeah, Si's known me his whole entire life.
Yeah, I am the younger brother, so
Yeah.
Matt hasn't known me his whole life because the first 2 years he was an
My
only
life didn't
child.
really start until you were born, though, of
I,
course. So,
I like to think of it that way. But yeah, so I'm joined by Matt for a specific reason because my brother has written a book.
no.
There it is. Hold it
Mirror
up in the
Paula.
right.
I like to do it
Hey,
as well.
hey, look at that! It's in stereo, and it's called The Deeper Magic. Okay, sort of a good inspirational title there. We'll get onto that in a minute though. But first of all, just before we started recording this, we were talking just about reminiscing a bit and going right back to 1998. And you were just saying, Matt,
Come
about
on.
we were at a conference together, and it was kind of a pivotal moment, wasn't it? Because in 1998, it was the summer, and you then got married in the autumn, and I got married to Lisa
Yeah.
the next year. You got married to Catherine, just to mention Catherine.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you remember about that summer?
Yeah, well, we'd because we've been best mates, even when we used to like nearly kill each other when we were kids, for our whole lives. And so I think just before, I guess as we were about to really embark on adult life, weren't we? I was about to get married. I was 23, I think, and you were engaged. And it felt like the end of that sort of youth, young adult era, and we're about to be, proper, fully fledged adults and mature and all that stuff. So we decided to go away, didn't we, and get some time together. So we went and climbed some mountains in the Lake District, and we went to a conference, Harrogate, wasn't it? Up in the
Harrogate, yeah,
north, in the
yeah,
north. But one night we'd been at a meeting, a friend of ours was speaking, and it'd been a great time, and Holy Spirit had been at work. And I just remember us sitting outside the tent, some wee hours of the morning, just dreaming about what we wanted to be and who we wanted to be for God. And like, hopefully, lots of young men and young people, we had great aspirations of wanting to see our nation impacted for Jesus, people saved, people healed. Do you know, I mean, there's that sense, I want to in 5 years see this many people healed. And yeah, so you get those moments, don't you, where that real strong desire comes out. And it's something we've both tried to pursue, I think, isn't it?
yeah. Come on.
To a lesser or greater extent, and lots of failure, lots of hardships and difficulties along the way. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think it was one of those moments we shared where it set the pace for the rest of our lives.
yeah, yeah. And very much the book is about your story, in a sense, the story of your family, but not necessarily from 1998, but from kind of 2011. So this is a story of the last 9 years, really. So what kind of what led you, in the last year or so to go, I want to write a book? What was it that just really prompted you to do that?
Yeah, I think I've always enjoyed writing and have always been a bit of a dreamer and wanted to do great things. I wrote a fantastic book, which I'm sure Si read when I was about 10, called The Red and Green Pirates. You may have read it as well. But yeah, I've always wanted to write, and I think the last few years I've really enjoyed blogging. We've have been privileged as a family to spend quite a bit of time abroad on mission, and those times managed to blog quite extensively. And I think my blog, we were in Cambodia for 3 months, and I wrote about 40,000 words in my blog, and just sharing life. I think, which is where I grew from. So in 2018, we were in the States on mission, working with a great mission in Mississippi, working with gangs and street people. And I was just blogging because I do, and I'd written some stuff about family. And we'd spent the night before, we were out there with the kids, and the night before we just had a sort of real heart to heart as family, and just sharing stuff. And I'll be honest as a dad, because we fail, don't we, parents? And just being honest with my kids. And so I just blogged about it, and someone had said, "Hey, you should write a book. This is great." Someone has fed back. So we just started thinking about, okay, actually, because I'd had a couple failed attempts at writing a proper book, not about pirates, and they hadn't quite got there. So I thought, what about if I wrote a book on family, which is the scariest thing to write a book about, because in my mind, I always think of some American evangelicals outside a really big house with white picket fence and their perfect teeth. And it can seem very you can seem very full of yourself to write a book about family, saying this is how you do it. But so we began to think, Catherine and I, about whether we should do this. We then went on to see some friends at Bethel Church in California and spent a week there. The first day, a friend of mine, he was on their school, which is about 2,500 people in the school. And his prayer revival group prayed for us. People didn't know us at all. And one of the guys said, "You're going to bring a revolution." Just as picked on my name, Ford, just as Henry Ford revolutionised car manufacture, you're going to revolutionise family. And hadn't told anyone, and it had never been to that moment. I wouldn't have ever said, "Oh yeah, I'm about family." I mean, I would have always said church or revival or something like that. Yeah. Then the end of that week, we booked in for some prophetic appointments that you can do at Bethel. Sat with some people we didn't know at all, who didn't know us at all, didn't ask for any information. They said, "You need to write a book, and you need to write about family, and this is what God's going to do." So, yeah, in a sense, they said, you got to do it, which is great, isn't it? Because it's always great when God asks you to do something. The problem is then when you're not doing it, you can feel disobedient. So it's been a bit of a challenging couple of years to get it done amidst everything else. I've never written before. So that's been quite hard at times.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, definitely. And the title of it, the Deeper Magic, obviously a reference to Narnia. Do you want to just explain the title?
Yeah, don't worry. It's not Satanism or anything like that.
Yeah.
Freak out.
Do you just want to explain just where that came from, that title, why that title?
Yeah, so as Catherine and I talked about, so I wrote the book, but in a sense we wrote it together in terms of we talked everything through, and it's come out of our life. We haven't sat down and come up with some, this is a really nice idea, we think. It's what we've practiced for the last 8-9 years with our children who are now 18, nearly 16 and 14. So what we felt to go for was not being prescriptive. This is how you do it. What it's about is, here's, in a sense, a load of seeds you need to sow into your life, and they'll look U-shaped, and yet they're kingdom seeds. So it's about a culture, because when we're called to be Christians, we're called to be of another kingdom. It's supposed to look different. It's supposed to have different driving forces, different goals, different ideas and thoughts around who we are and what we do. Mm-hmm. So that was so. The chapters isn't our story, we'll pick up on sort of 12 different aspects that we think have God has impacted our family and our lives around. And so really that was the sort of genesis of the idea. And then C.S. Lewis's lovely Deeper Magic thing is talking about the stone table, this image of the cross, Aslan being an image of Christ. And he's slain on this table, and yet there was deeper magic going on. There was something other going on, and we know on the cross, on the surface, it looked like weakness and failure, but actually it trounced darkness and destroyed the written code, the law that stood against us, and released grace. So does that sort of explain hopefully the idea? And you don't think it's something to do with Rent a Ghost or something?
Brilliant.
Show from our past.
There's a blast from the past. So and you just want to just briefly just say, so in 2000, the story really starts in 2011, and like you say, it's not chronological, but that's where something kind of happened. Do you just want to mention that, because I think that sprouts forth what you've been doing as family kind of came from that moment, didn't it?
Sure.
So what kind of happened?
Yeah.
There?
So as we said, and I'm sure a lot of you are in the same place, that maybe when you were in your early 20s, you had all these great desires in God, and this is what you want to be, and then of course life happens, and you get mortgages and stuff, and they crush you, and you have responsibilities, and you have several times things don't work out. I always think it's a bit of a miracle that me and Si both are involved in serving as leaders of churches, because church can really suck at times, and people get hurt. And we get hurt, and our families have got hurt, and that's quite a miracle we're here, I think. But I think in terms of, for us, we've been on that path, and you're trying to walk out where you are at with God. And we had a lovely home, we'd converted, we owned. My wife was a teacher, I was working for the ambulance service. But we just really hit a wall at the beginning of 2011. and stuff that I'd been trying to do didn't work out in terms of career, and we faced into that thing of actually what are we doing with our lives. And it felt like, I don't know if I want to just carry on this treadmill of, paying the mortgage, getting the kids to school, all that stuff. It's all lovely things. And yeah, it felt like, what's the point? I guess. And within a time of crisis, as often happens, God loves crises. We don't. He always works, doesn't he, at crisis? It's his favourite time of year. Because I think we're in crisis is when actually we're willing to let go. We're willing to let God. We're willing to change. We're willing to be different. Most of the rest of the time, we've got our heads down and we get on with it. So 2011 was a time of crisis, really. But out of that, just God set us free, really. And I'd realised, and that's a big part of the book, is about freedom. Is here I am. I'm a pastor's kid. I was part of a leadership team of a church at the time, not working for the church. I'd been involved full time with other churches. Sorry, my book keeps falling out. And realising actually I'm not free. And actually I'm such a product of my culture and my society. And I've got the fears and anxieties everyone else has. I'm living for the same thing as everyone else at work was living for, really, with a sort of Christ sheen or something. So 2011 was a time of crisis, and yet out of it was wonderful. I mean, just how God worked.
The crisis really came, didn't it? Because you felt God saying something about moving to Highworth, which is where you are now. A job opportunity started to open up, but then everything seemed to come. A tsunami of things happened at once, didn't they? Where Catherine had given her notice, you'd given your notice, the house had gone on the market, and then the new move to Highworth just went on a big pause, didn't it? And you were left with this gap of, what do we do now? The doors hadn't opened to move forward, and all the doors were closing behind you on where you were down in Littlehampton. And that led you then to take time out as a family and do something pretty crazy. What was it you did over that season? And tell us just a bit about that.
Yeah, so we ended up in Mozambique, which as you would, which God's crazy, isn't he? How he works, how he puts it all together. We don't trust him, do we? We have all our own plans, and we all get stressed when they don't quite work out, whatever. And yet he's like, he made the world, and he created salvation, and he's going to bring it all to a great summation at the end, and we're all going to be with him for eternity. I think he's got this stuff, but we struggle to do that, don't we? And I stress still and all that silly stuff, which we shouldn't do. So in terms of Mozambique, really came out of a place where, as I said, all the doors were shut, and we just thought, well, I've sold the house. I haven't got any jobs, but we've got a bit of money in the bank. Should we just go and do something? And bizarrely, we'd visited a church up in the Midlands, up in Birmingham. I'd gone with my eldest son back to a church that we went to, actually, that back in 2008 had experienced quite a move of the Holy Spirit in Dudley. And so I'd gone there with my eldest son for the first time. Then I was invited to come and visit where we've now moved to, which is Highworth. And we went to this conference before it, because I thought, hey, let's do a road trip with the boy. Let's go back to where in this place is where he gave his heart to Jesus. And then we met this lady called Heidi Baker who spoke there, who I didn't know at all, was incredibly impressed and impacted by her, bought her book telling her and Roland's story. And so we've been reading that, and that really challenged us, because they just like trust God. Weird, eh? Like just totally trust God. Very strange. And so we've been really impacted by that, and we got to the place where we had to leave our house, but we didn't have anywhere to go, and we just thought, what if we went to Mozambique? Which we thought was a stupid idea.
Yeah, which is where Heidi Roland...
that's where they serve. So Iris Global, you may have heard of. And so we ended up out there. I'll try not to spoil any of the stories in there, but had the best and the hardest time of our existence. I think being in poverty with young kids is really, really tough when we have all our Western ideas about what life should look like.
Yeah, and how old were the kids at the time? So you were in Mozambique, and the kids
Oh
were...
gosh, Ethan was 9, Caleb turned 7, and son was 5.
Yeah, so...
Would you believe? So yeah, we were out there for 3 months.
Yeah, so sleeping in a dark mud hut, all that kind of...
Yeah, well, we had a little house, but we shared it with 14 other people. We had one room for us as a family, which just about had a double bed, a bunk bed, and I slept on the floor. That was really it. And it's really hot, and we had 14 other people we shared the house with.
Yeah. And very much that what then sparked over that time has been very key in then what's happened since, because you've done a lot of mission as a family, doing life together as a family, and rethinking what it is to be family in this country, but also going on mission and being family, that are wanting to go after Jesus. And something I picked up on and at the end of each chapter, someone else from your family writes a reflection on the chapter, and all of them do it, don't they? So Ethan, Caleb, and Summer, and Catherine, all write. And something that really came out for me was that it's in the hardest, challenging times, that's when God meets us. And so why is it so often in our society we run away from suffering, we run away from hardship, we try and make everything comfortable, when actually, maybe when you're in Mozambique, there were some times where it was desperate, and that really is a time where you and the kids as well pray more earnestly. We seek God more truly. We need Him more, and that's something I found is when you go to places that are in desperate need, they have so much more of a felt desperate need for God. And so what have you kind of noticed, just briefly maybe mention a few places you've travelled on mission, and some of them for months, a few months at a time, some of them for a few weeks, and what's it you've seen as the difference in how people live and how Christians follow Jesus in those places?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, one of the things that Iris Global talks about in terms of any of their mission places, and we've loosely part of Iris Global now. We've been to Cambodia with them, and also to Senegal earlier this year, when you could actually go somewhere. Yeah. And I think the big thing that what Iris Global put out is, rather than here we are as white Westerners with money and we're going to come and sort all the problems, we're going there to serve and to learn. The poor know how to live for Jesus. They have no expectation of this life being really nice and good, and that's our problem. We have embraced an American dream as the Christian dream. So all of us expect to have more at the end of the year than we had at the beginning. We expect to go on nicer holidays next year than we did this year, have a better kettle than we did. The next kettle will be better than this one, the next computer better. That's what we're subconsciously driven into. So when any of those things don't work out, we panic. And we feel a failure, or we get stressed, or we blame God, or we overwork, or whatever. And the poor don't do that. They just get on with it. They totally expect to suffer. They totally expect God to be there in the suffering, and they live free in that. The expectation isn't for every day to be really nice, and their hope isn't for every day to be really good. Their hope is Jesus. Every day. And so, the Bible tells us, and we've all probably, if you've been around church for any time, classic verse in James, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds. But we don't do it, do we? If you get a bill out of the blue that comes through your door, you don't go, yes, no way, fantastic, I can't do this. And I'm in that place of weakness where I'm fulfilling the call of God in my life, which is to be needy and to be unable to do life without Him. And I know He already knew about this, so I don't know how it's going to happen, but He's going to provide and He's going to take me through. We don't do that, do we? Do you know what I mean? The last thing we do is pray, and I'm still there because I'm still battling to get this silly culture out of me, because it's so all pervasive, isn't it? So I think that's what we've seen with the poor, especially say being in Cambodia. The family who lived just next door to us in a slum we lived in, He was the chief of the village, and he'd lived through all the Khmer Rouge stuff in the 70s with Pol Pot and the horror that was that. And when you go, 1 in 3 adults was killed in the country. Do you know what I mean? You're just going, and when you hear about all the stuff there, and yet as we saw that family come to faith and then take what they knew, and do you know what I mean, they're so chuffed to have Jesus. You know, it's like, life sucks, God's good, and they live that. What we want is, we want life to be good, and if God's good, then my life better be good, and if it's not, then he can't be good.
Yeah.
That's our problem, isn't it?
Awesome. Yeah, just the phrase Jesus is enough, I think is the shortest way to explain the gospel. Jesus is enough, you know, in any situation. He's there. He's here now, but he provides for us a future, a destiny, an eternity, but also a purpose for living as well. Just can you just speak just briefly just about about the kids? Okay, so about everything you've just said is incredibly challenging, and it could sound very challenging for someone who was single to live that way, because you're making decisions to run after Jesus, and you know, how does that work as a family? And maybe just, you know, because all of the missions you've been on have been with the kids, or sometimes one of you's gone with one of the kids somewhere, but also just being on mission in the UK. That's what we're doing, aren't we? When we're you're in Highworth, we're in the kind of Rochester South End area, and how do we live as family for Jesus, and how do we encourage our children to do that? And this is a long question, but there's a chapter in the book.
You've got 1 minute.
Yeah.
Sort it out.
Yeah, just to tell it all. You have to read the book, everyone. But there's a chapter where you talk about one thing, and I think that's where you really get to the crux of this: is how do you do life for Jesus as a family, and particularly for the kids. Do you want to talk about that just briefly?
Yeah, I think that's such a massive one. I think one of the big challenges we face is that individual is everything in our society. And so we interpret everything about being about me. When the Bible says you, most of the time it's speaking about you, like you as a church, not us as an individual. So, and what that means is if God calls you, if God speaks to you about something, it can't happen in isolation. At some point, it has to affect Lisa, it has to affect your children, it has to affect those around you, to a lesser or greater extent, depending on what it is God said. And so I think that's the first thing within it is the realization that if God's called me to do this thing, then as part of that, he's calling my family. If God speaks to Catherine about something, then he's speaking to me about it as well. Does that make some sense? And then you need some wisdom to understand what that looks like. But I think that's been at the sort of core, I guess, of what we've started to embrace, and just going that actually, as we've moved forward, of going, wait a minute, I don't think I'm just supposed to, you know, be here, have my breakfast with the kids, and then off I go and lead the church. That actually we've all got to be involved in this. We're all involved in the most important thing on the planet, which is all together being Jesus and showing Jesus to the world. So trying to work that out for us in terms of a family context of what it looks like to actually make the most important thing that my kids know Jesus. That in the end, guys, we put so much effort, time, energy into absolutely everything else other than my kids to know Jesus. And I've come to the realization I will do anything to help my kids know Jesus. I can't make them, which is really frustrating. I wish I could. I wish it was like you could, washing your hands. You make your kids wash your hands, don't you, before they have dinner or after they've done number 2 or whatever. But you can't make your kids follow Jesus. But you can do everything you possibly can that would be a reality. And at times, if they say Christianity is boring, then what they're saying is your version of Christianity is boring because Jesus is not boring. So you get on your knees and say, really sorry, let's go and find a proper Christianity. Let's go and find Christ together. And to that end, I guess we have tried to prioritize that over everything else. So that's where our finance goes. That's where our time and energy goes. And everything else comes second. And you can read more about that in the book. But in terms of, whilst the specific context of our lives, of the book, I guess, and our lives has been about family, as in our little nuclear family, it's about family really in terms of us being the people of God. So everything in the book is totally relevant for you, whether you're a parent or not, whether you're in connection with children or not, because it's all really about the kingdom, and it's about God's kingdom and about what that looks like. That's the desperate need, isn't it? Mm-hmm. We can see what it looked like for Paul. That's what it looked like for Paul to be radical about Jesus. We can read about it in Acts and through the letters. What does it look like today? What does it look like with the internet and with now being on media platforms? What does it look like with our affluence and our choices? What does it really look like to walk with Jesus Christ? And this is what I think it looks like.
Wow. Yeah, and it's a challenging book. It's an encouraging book. It causes us, and I felt as I was reading, for me, I've kind of lived the journey in a sense. We talk regularly, and so I'm picking up, and then I'm reading conversations that you had with me, and it reminds me of stuff as well. But it is that challenge to rethink, to not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that comes from Holy Spirit encounter, doesn't it? And just before we finish, just be good for you just maybe to say just about that, about encountering the Holy Spirit is the trigger point of all of this, isn't it? That it's not by might, power, it's not by effort, it's not by us being more having the routines in place, being more disciplined, but primarily it's about encountering the living God. And that's something that you talk about in the book, and relating it to the kids and to you. I remember, you were filled with the Spirit at a young age. I was about, when I was speaking tongues, and I was filled with the Spirit about 14, 15. But how old were you?
So late, Si.
Oh no,
I was 5.
You were 5. Yeah. John the Baptist, I think, came out of the womb, didn't he? Filled with the Spirit.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and just want to say about that key thing about seeking an encounter with God that this stuff springs from.
Yeah. So I think what Si's touched on there is so important. That our faith is not a list of rules. It's not a belief system. It's not a regular religious attendance at different things. It's God in us. It's a living, breathing lifestyle of knowing Jesus through the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And so if we're not giving our children, and if we're not fostering that in ourselves, we're not Christians, are we? I'm not saying that we lost our salvation, but we're not walking out what it's all about. You've got the shell of it without the heart. And so for the key issue for all of us is to be filled with the Holy Spirit, because that's the ultimate promise. We often talk about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's great, but if I'm not filled with the Holy Spirit, it makes no difference to my life. It's just a lovely thing out there. And so, but as I was mentioned there, the issue is not when you get filled, that you just do. So it doesn't matter if you're 5, 14 or 94, get filled with the Holy Spirit. It doesn't matter what that experience is like, and I write about, just in terms of covering my children, it's all different for all my children. That's not the issue. There's no oh wow, I fell over and I didn't, therefore I've not got it. No, it's knowing that you have the Holy Spirit in you, and that becomes a vital part of your life, and that becomes your daily experience. God in us. You know Him. You grow to know Him. He guides you. He speaks to you. He brings you rest when everything's falling apart around you. So that's so vital, and I think we've often, in terms of, if I look at Sunday school, I went to Sunday school, and we're teaching our children good stuff, and good ideas, but it's just the same as if you go to school and we can learn all about biology, and okay, let's be a bit radical, let's take sex education. All the schools have lots of sex education, so no kids know loads of stuff about sex and how they should do it properly or whatever. A lot of them don't pay a blind bit of notice to it. Yeah, it's just education around it. It's not the heart. And what we need to be giving ourselves and our children is a daily encounter with a living God. And the big challenge, though, for us isn't like, well, I was baptized when I was 5, therefore I'm there. Well, no, it's the filling is to go on being filled. And I think there's so many people in our churches who have had a moment of baptism, but going, what was it like now? Yeah, we can almost rest on our laurels of a time or an experience, whereas actually it means I can prophesy, I can encourage people. It means my life can take a different shape. I see things differently. I can speak life. Yeah, I can suddenly know what to do and what the will of God is when no one else around me does. It's an exciting place to be full of the Holy Spirit, isn't it?
Come on, yeah, that's awesome. And just last thing, just before we finish, just. We're in the midst of a challenging time in the world, in our nation, and that's impacting the church. That's impacting every aspect of society, the economy. It's impacting right down to to health and mental health and individuals. Just how have you found releasing a book at this time? And you even mentioned the pandemic in the book, so it's that new, it's that fresh. But yeah, how's things been for you, and what would maybe be the one thing that you just challenge and encourage us with right at this moment?
I think on paper it's probably the worst time to do anything at the moment, with everything so closed down. And yet you have to go, okay, God, I tried my best over 2 years to get this thing done, and now's the time, and how here it is. But actually, I think because the book is about your heart, then it fits into whatever's going on. And actually, at this time, everything's being shaken, people. And it's going to carry on being shaken. I think all the stuff we've got at the moment, I think we're all a bit in denial and deluded, aren't we? We're papering over the cracks. We're all hoping it'll be sorted out. And yet the depth that this has shaken the whole world to is just phenomenal, which is totally fine as long as you're totally embracing a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Everything in me that's to do with this world is shaken off or shaken out. But everything that's to do with him can't be. And that's what the book is about. It's about a kingdom culture, what it is to have Jesus as your king, how to follow him in this day, what actually really matters, and how do we live. So there's chapters on things like honesty. What does that really mean, and what does that really look like? Talking about extravagance, and God is an extravagant God, and that means at times I can be totally poor and have nothing. Yeah, extravagance isn't the old prosperity gospel, yeah? It means I can be free to have little and have much. There's chapters in there on rest, chapters in there on doing stuff, yeah? And how every day we have to face into going, God, help me step forward in faith, because faith should look like me doing things that don't make any sense. So for me, it's going, okay, it's really fascinating that it's at this time, after putting 2 years of my life into this thing, over 1,000 hours, trying to craft it and get to a place where I can't pretend to be C.S. Lewis, but I'm trying to do the best I possibly can, and haven't padded the book out. So I hope, I think I've tried to make every line rich, every paragraph be impactful, because God is so brilliant. And Jesus is so amazing, and I just hope that what has cost us, what we've tried to walk through, what we've had the privilege of walking through, can encourage you to really just believe that He's good and that He loves you and He's got you, and that you can live free, and you can run after Him, and it's not a personality or a character or a specific even calling issue. To follow Christ is the call. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And so the book is available. It's available on Amazon, £11.50, something around there. But if you live in the Rochford Southend area, you can get them from me for a tenner. So
Come on.
I have some copies. and there's an audio version coming out.
Yeah, so you can get Kindle. If you go on Amazon, you can get Kindle, or you can get an Audible, which should be out like any moment. I'll let you know when it is. But the Audible it's all recorded.
Yeah,
that's stressful. I tell you, flipping out, preaching for 18 hours straight without missing a single word. But yeah, that's going to be available at ASAP.
So it's a fantastic read. Matt's such a gifted, expressive communicator, as he probably picked up in this kind of interview, and that comes through in his written word as well. I was just thinking, as you were saying, I think everyone should have a brother like Matt that inspires and encourages, and this is what he's like with me on the phone as well when we talk regularly. Is just that just brings that Holy Spirit encouragement, and as you read the book, that's what you get, is you get inspired to start to just think differently, that renewing of the mind. And
it's a U-shape. I think that's the really important thing. It's U-shape. Jesus is in you. You are unique. There's something that you can bring to this world nobody else can. So I don't want you looking like me or Si or any of us. I want you to look like you, full of Jesus, and that's what hopefully it helps you do.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much. Bless you, everyone.